9 o'clock, and joining us in studio this morning, we have, of course, Chaves County Manager Bill Williams back with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm learning a lot here. That's all I can
Probably
say.
not the kinds of things you want to learn, but
Yeah, I'm kind of having to poke out my mind's eye in a few cases.
a lot of TMI there.
Yeah,
but,
some of Sean's stories are out there.
Well, I'm sorry you had to endure that, but we do appreciate you visiting here. I know schedule's been a little off kilter here the last couple months with commission meetings getting pushed up or back here a little bit because of various events and things.
Right.
But so Bill's here to just kind of recap for us.
Yeah, we're a little late. We'll be late again next month.
Yeah.
I think that we're back on target in July, but I'll have to double check that.
Okay.
But there have been 4, I think, that have been rescheduled. So.
Okay. Perfect. So, but good news is county's been going busy and lots happening. So,
regardless of when we schedule the county commission meeting, things still do.
There's still
happen.
plenty on the agenda to get done and take care of.
It's just that public meeting hits a little different time, but all the stuff going on behind the scenes is still going on.
Absolutely. So, it's just when they officially can get together and make pass decisions on some of these different issues and things here. So, what's kind of been the focus here for this month?
Well, as everyone knows, the last 2 or 3 months, we've all been focused on budget.
Yes.
And yesterday, the interim budget was approved. There's a lot of back and forth with that. Each department brings forth everything. It goes to the finance committee. Finance committee makes recommendations and, back and forth.
Right.
Have a public hearing. We had a public hearing on the 13th, I believe it was, of this month, and discussed everything openly in the public and went back, made a couple of very minor changes. It was essentially unchanged from that meeting to this meeting. And then yesterday went ahead and approved it.
Awesome. Good deal. So is that pretty much mean it goes to Santa Fe here? Is there one more phase?
It goes to Santa Fe.
Okay.
Once DFA, what is that, Department of Finance Authority?
Okay.
Or something similar to that. Once they look at it and say, yes, this meets all the requirements of a budget for a public entity, then they send it back, and then we officially approve the budget.
Gotcha. Okay.
We've officially approved the interim budget, but they could come back and say, no, we think this needs to change. We've never had that problem.
That doesn't happen with us. I mean, I'm sure it happens at other counties and municipalities, but Chaves County, it's not a problem.
You have to have a balanced budget, which they do give you a little bit of leeway. I think that Annabelle told me you have to be within 1.5% of your revenues versus your expenses going out. And of course, first thing we do is discuss the revenues, and we say, okay, last year we got this much in gross receipts, got this much in property tax, we got this much from X, Y, or Z. And then they adjust those numbers. They say, well, is this year going to be as good as last year was? And we're cautious.
Gotcha.
And so usually if we think we're going to get $1 million, we might say, well, why don't we talk more like 900,000?
You think it's a real number and you always back it off a little bit
just to make sure you've got plenty. You'd rather have too much money than not enough,
Absolutely.
Obviously, just like you do at your home.
Sure.
So, and the last couple of years with COVID and so much uncertainty, and of course we're encountering a lot of that again this year for different reasons. But rather than backing off that $1 million to 900,000, they might say, the finance committee's, I'm still not real comfortable. Let's back that off to 800 or 850 or, so we reduce the revenues from what we think they're actually going to be to a reasonable number. We don't cut them in half by any means because we need to be able to fully fund programs.
You still got to have a budget to operate with, but at the same time, you want to budget conservatively and then be pleasantly surprised when the actual numbers come out.
It is a difficult job for all the commissioners, but especially for our finance committee, which is Chairman Cavan and Commissioner Ezell are our finance committee this year. And they had to make a lot of really tough decisions. Told people, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait for that. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to restrain yourself a little bit.
So let me ask a question. So say, down the road here, when it all said and done, you've forecasted this budget, planned accordingly, and then afterwards you find out, we're a couple million under that. What happens to that X? Does it go to the general fund, or do you go back and say, let's reassess a couple of things we didn't approve. Let's see if we can squeeze them in now. What happens after that?
Well, that's a really good question because every year we start out with our carryover. So we have to estimate how much we think is going to come back into the coffers at the beginning. So if we underestimated our revenues by $2 million. So we have to calculate, well, by the time everything's paid, I think we're going to have $2 million. That's one of the very first things that Annabelle, our CFO, puts into the budget. She says, I'm going to have this much coming back.
Okay.
And
what do we want to do with it?
Well, and then it rolls into next year's budget and just becomes a part of the revenues for next year's budget.
Gotcha.
However, when we're doing our budget presentations in each department, especially the big three, which are the road department, the detention center, and the sheriff's department are our big three, and then facility maintenance is quite a ways behind, but they're
on the list.
A pretty large budget. So they come forward and they say, this is what I'm going to need for next year, and then here's my capital outlay. For instance, the road department would like to get a new distributor truck. Unfortunately, the problem with distributor trucks is you can't get trucks these days.
Yeah.
We're looking at probably a year out.
You can order one, but you ain't going to see it.
But our current distributor truck, which is the heart of our paving operation, it's what sprays the asphalt emulsion on the road, and then they put the chips down and roll them in, and that's how we do our chip seal roads, essentially. Our truck is 18 years old. And, they maintain it very well. We have a great shop. Jay and his crew out at the road department shop, they really take good care of our stuff. And that's why we have a truck that's 18 years old. It's heavily used.
Well-maintained and well-documented maintenance records and all that, yeah.
So we need a new truck. So Joe puts that on his capital outlay, and I believe the truck was somewhere near, and I'll probably get this wrong, but I'm thinking by the time it's completely set up with the tank and the spray bars and everything, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me because, 18-wheel, all those trucks are
yeah.
hundreds of thousands
road
of dollars.
And stuff, retail price on a road grader is about $500,000.
Yeah,
we do get a little better deal than that, but not a whole lot better deal than that. So, they have a list of things that they would like to get. And that's when the finance committee says, well, rather than budget for that next year and inflate next year's budget, is it possible to buy that this year? And so that money that's going back into the budget, our carryover from excess, if you want to call it that, revenues that we didn't budget for using because we were cautious. A lot of times they'll take that and say, can we get that truck before the beginning of the new fiscal year? And then we go ahead and try to purchase some of those.
Some of those ones that are, asks or needs that are important, but they weren't like dire, but now it's like, we got the money. Let's address some of these important issues before they become dire.
Well, I think it's been 3 years ago now. We've been trying hard to bring our road department into the 21st century. Things have changed over the last years. Nowadays, they have milling machines. They go out. You've seen them on the highways. It's like a giant rotor tiller on steroids. Eats up all the asphalt, chews it up. Grinds it back to the size they can use, puts it back down, or they haul it off depending on what the situation is.
Recycling the asphalt, basically.
So some of our worst roads, in the winter, well, let me put it this way. The gravel roads, dirt roads out in the county, a lot of those literally were wagon trails 100 years ago. And eventually, people continued to use them. We started blading them, put some gravel on them, and it was originally a wagon trail, but a road was never really built there. They just kind of crossed the
just
terrain.
the path people took.
So some of those roads are pretty rough out in the county and get a lot of use. And so our goal with buying a new machine a few years ago, I'll get back to that, was to have a machine where we could rebuild the roads in the wintertime that are out in the county. And then in the springtime, just before we start chip sealing, they'll bring this big milling machine in and mill the worst roads in town, and then go back and repave those. But we have to do that in the spring because it has to be warm. So
Gotcha.
But we decided we needed this machine to help us to accomplish this task because it goes in, it will actually grind up soil 20 inches deep. The engine doesn't even, falter at all.
It laughs
just
at that.
Goes right along,
Doesn't struggle whatsoever.
But it will take a 20-inch deep swath, take that out, mix it all up, and lay it right back down in the spot. You hook a water truck directly on it so you get moisture in the soil. The blades come along behind it. So instead of hauling in truckload after truckload after truckload of material and getting the moisture right and building it up in lifts, it does that for you all in one pass.
Oh, okay.
And so several years ago, 3 years ago, I believe it was, we went to the commission and said, we'd really like to do this. It will really improve our ability to do our jobs on the county roads. They said, well, what's one of those cost? Well, one of those cost about $800,000. I believe it might have been a little higher than that, but I think that they had a price for about $800,000. They said, well, we understand you really need that. Is there any other way we can do it?
Yeah.
Well, we had looked into it. Said, well, we could buy a used machine. Those machines are so expensive that most construction companies don't purchase them. They just lease them.
Okay.
And so I was able to find several leased units, Amarillo, Lubbock, Dallas, within driving distance, that had less than 2,000 hours. I think the one we ended up buying had 1,200 hours on it. So it's essentially a brand new machine.
Yeah.
But the price was $400,000.
So you paid half the sticker shock off that.
Surely half. And so the commissioners told us at that time, they said, well, we think that we would have money to budget for that at that price. You guys go ahead and see if you can get one done before July 1st. And we scrambled and we found one in Amarillo, and we had to go through a lot of hoops because it was a used piece of machinery. A lot of other certifications had to come into place to make sure that you're
not buying a lemon here.
Right.
Yeah.
So we did that, but we were able to use some of that end of year revenue rather than carry it over to the next year. We were able to utilize those funds to purchase this machine, which has done great things for us.
Gotcha.
We only have one of those machines, and every winter we start trying to work on the roads out in the county, the dirt roads that have literally never had anything done to them, and trying to rebuild, miles and miles of road to modern day standards. And then in the spring we come in and we do the worst of the worst roads that are paved and try to get a few. So it's going to take us several years to get all that rebuilt.
Get into a routine.
But because the commissioners had that money and were willing to spend it on capital outlay like that, it was very beneficial to the county and to the residents.
Absolutely. And hopefully,
I'm really excited about that machine. It's awesome to watch.
Yeah, and it sounds like, because they'll maintain it and things. Who knows? It could be for the next 18, 20 years, be taking care of that for Chaves
I believe
County,
they did East Country Club last year. I'm not sure. They did several miles out there.
Okay.
Or a few miles out there on the west side of town.
But be looking for more of this, here in the coming years as they go and start getting these roads and doing that. And once they get into the routine, then it's, I think, at least I know Eddy County does this. And I think that's kind of standard they kind of have like a schedule where they kind of start at one spot and they work around the county doing the roads. And then by the time they do full circles, back to start over maintaining those. So it's kind of like just an ongoing clock. It's all right. We're here. We did here. Now we're going to go over here and look, and over here and look, and that's kind of, I think, they work it a little bit.
We use a lot of what we call LGRF, local government road fund monies that come from the state of New Mexico, and every year we turn in roads that have not been taken care of or have not been resurfaced in 6 to 8 years.
Okay.
And we turn in a list of those, and they fund a portion of it. We have to pay a portion of it, and they slice and dice. They do a lot of things. But that's how we fund a lot of our road projects. And they're based on, like, say, a time frame. But we also have an index where we go out and we assess roads quality.
Sure.
And we look at those items too, and sometimes we'll move a road up in the rotation. But yeah, generally every 6th, 7th year, you'll see them come back and do the same road.
And I imagine two constituents come and talk to their commissioners and say, why can't you fix my road here? And after, our commission's going, hey, we need to put this on the list here. I've got complaints.
Roads change priority, but generally there's a list of all the roads in the county and they rotate through. But some roads will last 2 years with all the dairy trucks or farm trucks or whatever on them, and other roads might last 10. So we have to find that sweet spot, and some of them get pushed back and some of them get moved up. But we really rely on the public telling us, hey, my road's getting pretty bad, because we don't drive every road every day.
Absolutely, yeah.
When we find out, oftentimes I'll get a call and I'll go out to a road and I'll say, oh man, I see what they're talking about. This is horrible. So we get those moved up and get them pushed through.
Sure. So lesson for the public here, if you do have roads in your county, you're in the county here and you have roads that are county roads,
call it road department.
If you're in the city, then you need to go to the city, fix it for them. But if it's a county road, reach out to your county commissioner. They'll take care of it.
Call the road department. Same thing. If you see garbage in the bar ditch, people throw out their sofas, old tires, all kinds of stuff. And when we find those, we go and pick them up and haul them off immediately. We don't go onto private property, but we do get things that are adjacent to the county roads. So any of that kind of stuff, any issues that you have with the county, feel free to call anytime.
Absolutely.
We'll do our very best to answer the questions, and hopefully, is interesting is sometimes I can talk to someone and I can give them good news and make them really happy, and sometimes I have to give them bad news. But I do call people back, and Mac will do the same, and people do respect just getting the straight
truth.
You know.
Be honest with people, and they respect that.
Well, we can't do that. It's not ours. It's out of our, or we're going to get that next year, or I'm glad you told me because we're going to get somebody over there this afternoon. It just depends on the situation. We will address everything that someone.
And I think that's what most people want. They, okay, even if it's not the answer you want, at least look, someone's aware of it. There's trying to be something done about it. Ideally, that wasn't the outcome I wanted, but at least I know that there's something going on, and who knows, maybe it's an alternative we can fix later, but it's on the radar now.
Well, and one of the stories I like to tell, and I've told it here before, is we didn't know about a bridge. We had a planning and zoning case where they wanted a special use project. The neighbors came out and forced it. One of the problems we have is that bridge is unsafe and narrow, and now you're going to add more trucks to it. And we said, oh, really? And so we looked into it, found out the bridge was bad. We immediately put it on our ICIP, our capital infrastructure plan, which everything has to be on there.
Sure.
And we're starting on that. That'll be one of the things we'll talk about in the upcoming couple of months. But we put in our plan saying we need to replace this bridge because the conditions on this road have changed, and it is an unsafe condition.
Yeah, it's an accident waiting to happen.
So we went to the legislators. The legislators understood our issue. They funded the project fully. And like I say, this is how government is supposed to work. People come to you, you do your job, and you let somebody else know, you find the funding somehow. It was perfect up to that point. And then the governor vetoed it, the previous governor, not the current governor. But anyway, it was vetoed. So now we're back at square one. But the people brought it to our attention, made us aware of it, and we have not stopped asking for money for that. Even though we didn't actually get all the money for that, we continue to keep it on our RCIP, ask for funding. We did get funding this year that was approved, or last year, I guess, that was approved by the governor, not enough to do the thing, but there are also other programs, and we are well on our way, we believe, to getting the funding to take care of that bridge.
Sure.
And had the people not come and told us that there was a bad bridge there, the people that drive over it every day explaining to us that it's dangerous because you can't see the trucks coming, we wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And thankfully, people tell us, and we do our best to try to resolve issues.
Well, hopefully they'll able to. Is the goal to replace the bridge or repair it?
No, to replace it.
Replace.
It needs a wider bridge there.
Okay. So it just needs to be able to handle more wider, bigger vehicles.
Yeah.
It's not big enough.
Well, there's a lot of truck traffic. It's on the way to the landfill on Brasher Road.
Okay.
So the road narrows actually as it goes over the bridge. You've got a wider road bed, and the road tends to narrow because there's no shoulders on that bridge. So everyone kind of moves over to the middle. The bridge is raised up, so as you climb the hill, you see a semi coming the other way who has also moved to the middle of the road.
Yeah.
So it's a serious issue. And
then you need a diaper.
Yeah. And of course now there's concrete trucks and trash trucks and the regular traffic out there, and we've not forgotten. We're going to find a way to fund the bridge there. Same as the elevator at the courthouse. People said we needed an elevator for handicap access to the courthouse, and we worked really hard on it. It took several years, but we did get funded, and we actually have that problem resolved now.
Yeah.
It wasn't that requests for falling on deaf ears. It was just elevators are expensive. We had to figure out how to do it. So we did.
There's a lot of logistics there. So, well, good. It's funny. Real quick. My brother lives in Northern Virginia there. And of course, we look out here and we live, but a lot of the areas, same there. Roads and things were before cars and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
And so there is a bridge. And actually for him, it's more of a tunnel bridge. It's really small, but anyway, it's a railroad track that goes over the road there. So they built this big, beautiful stone bridge that goes over it, but it's just got a little tunnel underneath, and it's really only wide enough for one lane of traffic, but it's a 2-lane highway. So in essence, people have to go through, and there's a corner there. So the bridge was built back in the 1700s. So it's not going anywhere. So now what people do is they honk. That's the move. And so when you go to the bridge, you have to honk before you go through, and it scares the daylights out of me because you really don't know who's on the other side. It's a gamble every time you go through there. But yeah, they've been doing that for hundreds of years now.
Hopefully the guy on the other side understands that when you honk, you wait till it's your turn.
Yeah, but that's just it. Most of them, they don't even slow down. And it's like, well, that did nothing. but yeah, it's one of those things. So when you talk about that, I was like, yeah, sometimes these things were built and designed way before, it outgrew the needs of today and things like that. So, but
well, the Hagerman Bridge going over the Rio Feliz as you take the old highway into Hagerman. When I was a kid, that was the road that there was no bridge beside it. You went through the covered bridge there. And I'll never forget, my mom met a truck. She would wait until there was no one coming, then she would rush through the bridge. One day, for whatever reason, she started through and she met a semi coming the other way, and she kept veering over and veering over and veering over. And I opened my mouth to say, "Mom," and she smacked the mirror on the side of the bridge, and it came in through the window.
Oh, wow.
So, the bridge is plenty wide, but still, I'll never forget. My mom just was scared to death. She kept moving over, and it's what happens.
It does.
So, fortunately, we can rebuild infrastructure and do things, and like I say, come into at least the 20th century, if not the 21st. Cars are getting smaller, though, so maybe maybe the
by the time it'll be back relevant again.
Yeah. One of the big things that we did on our budget that we're real proud of this year is it's been several years since our staff at the county got a cost of living increase. And so we ask everyone prior to budget time to really keep the belt tight and try only to ask for things they really needed so that we could come up with money to give a cost of living increase to all of our employees. And we were able to get that done, a 5% increase. And
and the way inflation...
Make us a little more competitive.
Well,
inflation's been about 8%, and we gave a 5%.
But I mean, that's the world we live in now. Is it's almost a necessity right now. It's not a luxury. Right. We got to get, if it afford it, you got to give these cost of living because families got to compete with the $6 gas and $10 gallon of milk or whatever.
And one of the things that I can't say a whole lot about because it's not completed yet, but the commissioners last year set aside some money to give the sheriffs a raise. Unfortunately, the sheriffs have a union that was unable to come up with a contract.
Collective bargaining or whatever.
Collective bargaining, yeah. And so we couldn't give them. You can't help them. If it's not
until that collective bargaining and the agreements
until the agreement's done. But they set aside money last year to do it. Well, they carried that forward, and then they set aside another factor this year, and it looks like we're going to have an agreement. So we will be able to. But thankfully, the commissioner said we want to take care of our law enforcement, and we set money aside so it would be there when the time came.
When the labor
because
union
even with
all
collective bargaining agreement comes through. If you didn't budget for it, they cannot force you to go back and provide money for it. So they were looking ahead and said, we want to take care of these guys. It's very important to us. Our hands have been tied. We can't give them anything, but they set money aside. And now that it appears that we're going to have an agreement, they'll be able to.
And I imagine it's got to make things a little smoother at the negotiating table too. You know what I mean?
Well,
you would think.
I would hope, and we have been looking out for them, even though we couldn't do anything about it.
Sure.
And that's totally out of our hands or their hands.
Right. Yeah. And, this is other people in other rooms that are dealing with this.
But anyway, we got that pay raise for all of our employees set aside, and awesome. We also addressed the $15 an hour minimum wage. It's not 15 yet, but it's going to be. It's supposed to be. And so we only had a couple of charts that affected, and so we went ahead and made that entry level at 15 and kind of compress those charts. Doesn't affect them on the years out, but at least coming in, we can get to that 15. And rather than do 14 this year and then work on 15 next year, we just did it all in one fell swoop. It's really not a big effect on the budget because we have most of our jobs pay more than minimum wage, but there were 2 or 3 that were affected.
And it makes sense as long as it doesn't make a big impact like that, let's go ahead and get it done now. That way we're in place when it's officially needs to be and we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. We're covered and we're just going about our business.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. So we have a little bit of time,
we
I
do.
guess?
We do. We got about 3-5 minutes here.
Oh, okay. We did some proclamations yesterday.
Awesome.
Again, we want to be really encouraging to our local sports teams.
We have a lot of great organizations and people in our community, and it's always awesome to put a spotlight on
the NMMI Colts baseball team won the 3A state championship, and so we did a proclamation. It was
a great game to listen to if you got to catch it on the radio here. Yeah,
they went to play apparently, and they ended the game early because of the mercy rule, because they really put a spanking on them.
Yeah.
And a very good team, too.
And they were a great team, but I think going in, they were a little underdog. And then people were like, ooh, they're better than we thought we were. And I think the first round or two, people were like, whoa, that was surprising. And they, of course, by the time they get to the semis and the finals, people were wise to them, but I think going in,
they kind of went in under the radar, but then they said, this is a real team.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. But anyway, they won the state championship. And as we've talked about earlier this year, Nemi also won the college championship.
Yeah, the
in
NCAA Division II championship.
Right.
Yeah.
And in volleyball, the ladies finished in second
They've
place.
always had a strong volleyball program, yeah.
My goodness, Nemi has done an outstanding job this year in sports. They always do an outstanding job academically. They always do a good job in sports, but this year they've really stepped up their
championships were lining up. But a lot of hard work and effort. But you're right, the volleyball program, they've always been a real competitive. I mean, all their programs are, but I know they take pride in the volleyball. That's that team. Is usually in it in the end all the time. They're ones, if they're not winning it, they're right there at the end. So.
And then along with the football or the baseball championship, the 3A state championship, coaches Ward and Rogers both decided that they were going to retire, and they announced it after the game. We also did a proclamation for them because they were outstanding coaches their entire career, not just this season, not just because they just won, but their service. They've won state championships before. They did a great job. And I wish I had memorized it, but I found that Richard Nixon in 1973, I think it was October 6th, is Coach's Day, and they had a proclamation, and I was able to borrow some stuff from his proclamation and put into our proclamation.
Oh, cool.
I mean, some real good words about what a coach is and how they impact their communities, their players, and all that stuff. So that was really good to be able to give that to them. And, New Mexico Military Institute is an asset.
So I imagine you probably had some crowds at this meeting because you probably had
we had a few people,
some athletes and former players and stuff coming out to celebrate with them.
It's really
great.
Cool. Now, when we did the NCAA football or NCJA, whatever, I don't know the acronym.
The junior college championship.
When we did that, the football players are some pretty big guys. I felt a little intimidated as they walked by.
Yeah, they'll fill a room.
Those guys, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm you guys are on the podium, but they're still probably as tall as you.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching them in the pros. Those guys are amazing and built of muscle, nothing else.
I highly recommend the fall. You go out, since they play a lot of their games at the Wool Bowl now on Saturdays, the home games anyway. Y'all get tickets, go out to check out a game Saturday, and you'll be you'll be, like I said, they're defending champs now. You're getting the best in the business right here in Roswell. So go check them out.
And you may be watching somebody that you're going to see on television. With their Super Bowl ring.
They might be on your Cowboys team or your Broncos or whoever you're rooting for around here, these parts. But
So that's really neat that we have that connection. Of course, everyone knows that Roger Staubach, one of my heroes from
he spent
NFL
some time
days,
in MMI.
Time.
Yeah.
Tom Brookshire, he was from Roswell High, but also Roswell has given their share of athletes up. And,
absolutely.
And so keep watching.
Yeah, you never know. One of those,
the Military Institute, because they're bringing in the best of the best and teaching them how to be better.
Yeah, one of those guys might be making it to a Pro Bowl in the NFL near you someday.
So, cool. Just quickly, I want to go over. We did a lot of business, of course. Some planning and zoning changes and stuff. One of the things I wanted to bring up is we passed a resolution requesting approval to condemn structures that are a hazard or danger to our community.
Okay.
So there were 9 structures that were identified by Lewis and his team as real hazards to our community.
Gotcha. They need to come down, or someone's going to get hurt.
There are some places in our county that are abandoned, that have burned, that have fallen down, and these are some of the worst of the worst. And we don't really normally pursue those things, but in some cases it gets so bad that we have to.
These are health and safety concerns that we need to address.
Affecting other people's. There was this lady who's been, I think she's probably in her 80s. She fixed up her own house by herself. She painted it up, went out every day, painted a little bit here, a little bit there. She even got a ladder and got on the roof and painted the chimney, and just really took pride in her little place. The place next door, I don't know all the scenario, but It ended up being abandoned. The trees died. The trees fell over on the house. They've had a fire over there. Part of the trees fall on her place. She has to pay someone to come pick them up. She can't do that.
It's just
But this little lady who's doing nothing but trying to do the best with her property is totally affected by someone who's not able to do theirs. I believe there may have been a death in the family and people live somewhere else.
There's a property owner? Or is it owned by a bank or something? Or
no, it's I believe probably heirs of the person that had it, but they're unable to do it, and
they live somewhere else and have never even seen the property.
One thing after another, and okay. But that's not fair to the little 80-year-old lady.
Absolutely. She's just trying to maintain her peace.
So those are kind of some of the worst that have to be addressed. I mean, you can't just let it continue to go. And and the county doesn't like to go in and take over take over their property, but force these kind of things. But sometimes you have to. And there were 9 projects that.
We're running out of time, but I'm curious, do you ever recoup costs back on those sometimes from the original property owners, or is it usually a lost cause?
It's usually a lost cause.
Is it?
It's a commitment of county funds to clean up the county.
Right.
And
I know you guys do make attempts to try to get the property owner to foot the bill there, but if it's like pulling teeth sometimes, or getting blood from a turnip.
In many of the cases, if the property had any value, they would be doing it themselves.
Exactly.
And then just But it doesn't. So they don't, and we had to step in and do our part.
So at some point, do you end up annexing that property, or whatever happens there? Does at some point the land defaults to a bank, or what's?
Well, we will put a lien on the property.
Okay.
But unless we exercise that lien, that just means it's going to follow. Whoever buys it next inherits that lien. So if they stop paying the taxes, for instance, there's a state tax sale going on. Mm-hmm. And people have to do their due diligence on that. If you decide you want to buy one of these tax properties, make sure you know what the taxes are due and all that, because you're going to inherit. If there's a lien on the property,
that's all yours.
You get all that. They try to sell them for what the taxes are due so that they come out clean. The state of New Mexico does that. But if there's a lien, you bought it. If there's a problem with the fences being on the neighbors, that's your problem.
Gotcha.
So be sure and do your due diligence if you decide to purchase one of those state auction properties. But
of course,
same way, if we tear something down, put a lien on it, and they sell the property, the person quits paying the taxes on it after 3 years delinquent, and they go through their process, put it up for sale, and you go and buy that property for whatever the taxes are, say $4,000. Mm-hmm. Say you buy it for $4,000, but then you find out there's a $10,000 lien on it. You bought the lien.
Yeah.
And you can't, sell the property until the lien's
you can't do a thing with it until
So be sure and do your due diligence. So we do put a lien on the properties, but unless we exercise the lien, take them to court to take it away from them, we don't end up with the property. And that would be pretty unlikely that we would do that, but the lien would actually follow the property.
So do your homework before you buy one of those, but you can find a deal if you're looking. We're about out of time. Is there anything else we want to make sure we cover before we let you get out of here?
I think we pretty much covered the main stuff, and we certainly had a good visit, and we learned all about Sean and his eating habits and his storage of French fries and all that good stuff. So that's the important part.
Well, we thank you, Bill, as always here, and we'll get you scheduled here probably again like the last week of the month here, next month as well.
Yes.
So to line up with the commission meeting there, it'll be the final Thursday of the month, right?
Right. We will be canvassing the primary election. I believe it's going to be on the 13th, but we'll make sure that you get that information so that you can let people know to come on out.
Come on out, man. And don't forget, early voting's going on right now for primary, and then we're like a week away. What is it?
It's real close. Yeah.
Not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, I think, is primary, isn't it?
I think so.
I think, because the 31st is what Tuesday. So, it's like the next Tuesday after that.
It's the next Tuesday,
yeah. So we're about a week and a half away.
Yep.
So. Well, thank you, Bill. As always, have an amazing Memorial Day weekend here, and
thank you.
And appreciate your coming on and talking to us every month. We do appreciate it.
All right.